And there we have it, guys. The season has now, for me, officially kicked off. Like I said in my video yesterday, until Marotta and the coach do their kickoff press conference for the season, my season hasn't started. But today it has started. And what we're going to do is, of course, go through all the words from Chivu and Marotta together. Well, not all, the main talking points. Otherwise, we're going to be here for hours. And there was lots of interesting things, some things that, just expected, predictable answers, but then some little interesting insights as well. So we'll go through it all. And of course, you guys throughout the comments, let me know whether you agree or disagree or have anything to say on what we're seeing. But of course, first of all, make sure you leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And we'll start off. Who shall we start off with? We'll start off with our new head coach, Christian Chivu, suited and booted with the tie, black and white, ready for the funeral of the Serie A teams, right, guys? Well, we'll see. But important words from Chivu. The headline is, I want to contribute something important to this Inter team. We have the ambition to be always competitive. And that's where I want to start. Both Marotta and Chivu basically confirming, we need to get back to winning ways. That's the important thing at Inter, competing for all titles. That does not change. That has been confirmed once again. And that's, of course, what we want to hear. But let's dive into a little bit deeper into Christian Chivu's words. So, of course, typical questions to start off with from Inter TV. First season at the helm of Inter. What spirit do you have for this restart? Of course, after the Club World Cup and everything that happened. He says, with the right spirit to maintain and remain a competitive team, which is our goal. The expectations have been the same since this team was founded, to be always competitive, to establish an identity, and to maintain loyalty and passion to achieve our goals. Sounds basic, but yeah, we need to get back to the basics after what happened to us last season. Good stuff from Chivu in general. If you've not watched Chivu press conferences and interviews, he does come across very well. I think he is a better communicator than Inzaghi was, and I think also better than Antonio Conte was. He's more clear, and his Italian is actually really, really, really good. He's able to convey his emotions and concepts really well. Of course, this question on Hakan, we could not avoid that one. Chala's situation has been resolved. How much easier can having such a strong group make your job? And he says, I believe that's what this is why this group has achieved what it has achieved in recent years. And it's a testament to what we've achieved so far. A winning team that reaches 2 Champions League finals, 1 Europa League final is a testament to a solid group. And actually, before we continue, because of this comment about what this team has achieved, let's go to what Marotta says. And he kicked off without questions. He kicked off, with a little monologue at the beginning. He says, good morning, everyone. Start a new season. I wanted to highlight the recent journey that, the Inzaghi cycle. I think saying to, journalists and fans who may be downplaying what Inter have been doing over the last few years. In Italy, we are the team who have won the most with 7 titles, the one that has earned the most points in Serie A total, and that has participated consistently in the Champions League, something that our competitors have not done. Inter reaching 2 Champions League finals in 3 years. Last season, 63 matches coincided with the arrival of a new ownership, which they are present today, Oak Tree. But just on that point, I agree with Marotta. I like that he started with that because sometimes it's kind of underplayed, the consistency that Inter have had. So let me just give you a quick visual example of what Marotta means. This is it, basically. Like, if you see the other competitors, I mean, you could add a Juve into this, and Juve have been, fourth, whatever. But if you focus on Inter, Milan, and Napoli, the last 3 Scudetto winners, you see Inter have been the most consistent, whereas Milan and Napoli have had very high peaks, but very low lows, like Milan just did last season, a Banta-era season, finishing 8th and no trophies. Napoli, I guess, if you ask the Inter fan, 4 or 5 seasons ago, let's say 4 years ago, if you, in the next 4 years, you might have one Banta-era season in between where you finish 10th, where you end up with 2 Scudetti, over 1 Scudetto, what Inter did, and 2 Champions League finals, both losses, you definitely probably take what Napoli have done, right? So we'll give them that. But you have to, in terms of how a company is ran, how a team of directors would be valued or their performance appraised, and evaluated, Inter have been the most consistent team, challenging for Scudetto pretty much every season apart from this season. But then we got the Champions League final this season, and so we did this season. I mean, I guess I've put the season lower this year because obviously we missed out on every single title and we had 3 on the line. But that's up to you whether you want to, which way you want to put that line. But if we went to do an average line, Inter's average line, Inter's would be going like this. Milan's is definitely downward trajectory. And Napoli, yeah, maybe you could say slight upward trajectory, but just, onto Marotta's point, I see where he's coming from. But of course, we need to continue that line, and hopefully this line can start going upwards again. So going back to Chivu's words, what will Chivu's football be like? And of course, they're here in the press conference, they asked him about, formation. Is it 3-5-2, 3-4-2-1? What is it? Unfortunately, Chivu was not willing to give us the numbers, but he started to kind of give us some hints as to what he wants. These are the numbers, and they'll remain so the translation's kind of loose, but I'm thinking he's saying, you guys want to know the 3-5-2, 3-4-2-1, but yeah, basically it will be around that, the same. And he says, sometimes we build up in a 4 in the past. So principles are what counts. Our intention, now this is the key point, our intention is to be aggressive, vertical, and balanced, and to achieve results through the moments of a match and a season. So there you go again, reiterating what we've been hearing. A more aggressive Inter within a higher line probably, and a more aggressive press, more vertical, less sideways, but still we are talking to a centre-back here, Christian Chivu, but remaining balanced. Could this year's desire to restart be similar to the one after Istanbul? You remember, guys, how Inter cleaned up in Serie A the year after the Istanbul final. Is all the players talked about it. They used that final loss against Man City to restart and turbocharge that season afterwards. But Chivu's kind of not really looking too much towards that. He says, we don't want to look to the back or to the past. We don't want to take revenge, but rather focus on the present to build the future. We inherited, again, talking about the last few years, what Inter have been doing, trying to remain at the top. And we have an obligation to maintain this regardless of what we achieve at the end of the season, whether we win titles or not. Of course, as fans and hopefully the players and the coaching staff, they want to win titles this season. We cannot have another zero titoli season. Ideally, we will do all our best to achieve. We'll do our best giving our all to achieve our objectives. In words, everything is simple, but in reality, everything is more difficult. But this group of players has shown over time that they are united and have the desire to make an impact and remain at the top of Italian, European, and world football. Again, very good words from Chivu. Hopefully, we can live up to them. Little throwback to the treble winning team. They have this ongoing WhatsApp group chat that they always reference. What will you ask of your players? They talked about how he was, going above and beyond. He had a head injury, played with a helmet, risking his life, basically. And he says, I ask and demand respect for the teammates, for themselves, for the club that they play for. It all starts with that integrity, the desire to overcome everything, the desire to overcome difficult and challenging moments. This group has shown that they can do it, that they can overcome atrocities. And actually did say atrocities in Italian as well, which was a pretty strong word. But I guess we could say last season, the ending was an atrocity, because that's the only way we can move forward. What happened to us back then was a season of ups and downs, talking about the treble season, and then you always have to know how to manage. Then they asked him, Conte had a little slogan in Napoli in terms of this kind of translates to from Napolitan translates to, we need to work harder, etc., etc. And he basically said, no, you're not going to get no headline or marketing slogan from me. We don't need to copy anyone nor launch slogans. We just want to be competitive, stay competitive. Again, they tried to force him to say something about the formation. Does Inter want to change depending on the match? And he says yes. So here's one more hint from Chivu. It will be an Inter that wants to be more unpredictable and hybrid. They can do that. We can adapt to the football matches. So again, what we've been seeing, what we saw at the Club World Cup, yes, probably 3-5-2 will be the base, but it could change depending on the opponent in the match. So I think, yeah, even though he's not giving anything away, I think he is saying that it needs to be definitely a team that will change formation much more than it did under Inzaghi and Conte. How did you handle what happened at the end of the season? They're again here referencing the Lautaro Hakan stuff. And he says it was a discussion about things that happened but weren't said. These are things that are part of the dressing room of a group that has a great desire to win. The group needs a bit of clarity every now and then. And hopefully they've got that clarity and are ready to get going again. They asked him again about how they overcome the Champions League final. We're a mature group, certain amount of experience. We know how to accept criticism, handle difficult situation. The team were very high in May, but unfortunately things didn't go as everyone expected. I'll skip past this part now. Then they asked him, was there anything, you like from the Club World Cup? The fact that despite little energy, a lot of disappointment, I saw a team that gave it all to achieve important results, because we understood right away the expectations are always high. We always try to give our best. Despite the 3 weeks spent locked in a hotel, we had to travel despite the weather changes. That created some difficulties. I saw guys who gave it their all. And then important question, is this group is already complete, or is something still needed? So, trying to get some hints for the transfer market or what he wants. And he says the club and I are always in contact to establish transfer strategy and the future of this team. We are in close contact and share the same ideas. We are certainly always open to any opportunities that may arise, especially since there is still a month of transfer window to go. So yeah, he's not saying no and this team is perfect and I'm happy with all the players. That was quite clear to say that, yeah, we are looking and we are wanting to change players in this team, which is good to see. Are you aware that there's a journey ahead that can't be made up of just successes? And yeah, you said this is part of life, not just in football, but at the same time, we're aware of what Inter it represents. Things are simple. You can win right away or not. But in both situations, you have to accept that it's a journey. And once again, that word comes up, journey, or in Italian, percorso. I know that a lot of Interisti hate that word right now, percorso, because it was always something used last year by Marotta, Inzaghi, and everyone, percorso, the paths, the journey. In the end, the journey yielded us nothing. But, again, just reiterating again, Inter want to be at the top of Italian and European football. And that would be the case regardless of, who the coach is. Then, interesting question. What can you tell us about Leone and Esposito, not as footballers, but on a human level? And he says they're both great people, and I think they'll be the future of Italian football. You, as in the journalist, you'll enjoy them for a long time because they'll represent the Italian national team for many years. And of course, that is why Inter want Giovanni Leone. What are you enjoying most so far as the Inter head coach? He says the responsibility I've given, I'm enjoying it. I've always taken on responsibilities in life. I've always accepted them to achieve my personal goals, which he has. This guy moved from Romania at a young age to the Netherlands, became captain at Ajax, moved to Roma, moved to Inter. Definitely went through a lot of adversities with his head injury, his coaching career. But he says it's not just that, because this club is at the top of world football and I'll do my best to live up to it. I arrived in 2007 and after a few breaks here and I am again. These are my ambitions. Inter is always in my heart and I want to give something important to this club, the same things they have given me in recent years. Of course, there he is tugging on our heartstrings. Christian Chivu, of course, as an iconic treble team member. Those are nice words to hear, of course. How long will it take for Inter to become Chivu's Inter? And he says, as a coach and a former player, I believe one thing. The players make the difference, not the coach, the players. That's the most important thing. The coach transmits ideas, creates an identity, but the most important thing is what the players can bring on the pitch. I've never seen a good coach without good players, and that's how it is now, and that's how it will be in the future. And he is 100% spot on. Back to trying to tease him to give us more insight. Can Hakan play in a different role? And of course, they're talking about, can Hakan play in the double pivot if it's going to be a 3-4-1-2? And his answer, again, circumnavigating it, not really giving a straight answer. He's like, what do you want to know? The numbers? How many of us are there? Because we have a large midfield. There are a lot of midfielders right now. Inter, obviously, that's why we're trying to get rid of Aslani at least, if not Zielinski as well. We have a lot of players, very good and very strong players. You want to know if there will be 2, 3, or 4 in midfield? we'll see. We'll have to see as we go along. My idea is there is in some matches there will be 3, and in others there will be 2. So as again, I think the base will be the 3-5-2, but then it will change depending on the match and the opponent. We'll choose the names based on their performances during the week. We'll also choose them based on the opponent. And I'm happy that Chandler is back healthy. He worked hard this summer and he's available. He's really hungry to bounce back. In America, he was very bitter and disappointed at not being able to help the team, because of his injury. He's worked hard and a lot over these 3 weeks, and I saw him perform well again today in training. That's good to see. Hopefully, he can adapt to the new roles. Can the midfielders you have possibly hold up the 3 forwards, as in again, trying to get something out of him, 3-4-2-1 or 3-5-2? Or do you think you need to add something in terms of characteristics in that department, which obviously I think most of us think we do, especially I think you need a different type of midfielder if you are going to play 3-4-2-1, and obviously you need a winger. Adam Lukman, we'll get to that. And he says, I never said I'll play with 3 strikers. I only talk about the midfield. When I refer to the numbers, they're just numbers. Coaches always love to say this. Inzaghi used to say this, but at the end of the day, he always played the 3-5-2. Even in the past, this team's foundation's always been 3-5-2. But in many matches, here he is, that comment I was talking about earlier, they often playing out with the back 4. It depends. I think it's not translated accurately here. He was talking about playing out from the back with the 4. We build up in a 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1. You know how Inter have been under Conte and Inzaghi. It depends on how the teams, come get you, how they want to hurt you in certain positions, certain situation. Sometimes 3-5-2 can become a 3-2-5. As we know, when we're attacking, it becomes a 3-2-5, a 4-2-4, 4-4-2. These are always things that have little to do with the dynamics with the match. You have to know how to interpret things, be aggressive. And this is another key moment, guys. Be aggressive, destabilize, beat your man, accept duels, and try to win them, because whoever wins the duels also wins the matches. So this is very much the modern coach philosophy. When I hear Mikel Arteta talk, Luis Enrique, PSG's manager, a lot of these modern coaches, they all talk about this. Winning your duels, which sounds very simple and at times sounds almost rudimentary. Winning duels also sounds yes, the dribbling side, but also just the physical side, just winning your headers, winning your 50-50s, that type of just basics, winning your duels. But what Interisti wanted to hear, of course, is about this destabilizing the opponent and beating your man, which is something that we very, very much lacked. And that's why we're trying to target different players, and we already signed different types of players that we didn't have before. And he says we're focusing on that, on the principle, trying to give an identity right away so as not to be unprepared when we have to change something during the season. We'll train more formations in this period to be ready to change from game to game and during the game. That is what we want to hear. An adaptive hybrid Inter team, like you mentioned earlier. And then, how can you make the difference? And he says, I hope I'll make an impact with common sense, with a bit of nastiness as well, which is interesting. Nastiness, with anger, with a smile, being as well prepared as possible for my opponents. When I talk about myself, I also talk about my staff. I'll try to understand the players, talk to them. There is, that modern coach approach, because we often expect things from them, but forget we're dealing with people who also have problems and things on their mind. I like this way of working and living. Communication is important. It's no coincidence that I spent 6 years in the youth academy because I didn't feel ready. Look at him. He's admitting that, I didn't feel ready for the jump to adult football. I didn't even know how to do it at first. I prefer to work on this to get used to being empathetic and fully understand what it means. So then I had the opportunity at Parma, 3 months, and now I'm dealing with more mature players who I've also worked with in the past. I'm pleased to have found great champions because I've always respected and admired this team and these players. And then he confirmed, he's received messages from some of the treble guys, Maicon, Pupi, Materazzi, etc., which is always nice. And then finally, after so many years, could starting as non-favorites be an advantage? Because, maybe this summer, we'll see by the end of the summer when the Mercato is over, but this might be the first in 4 years probably we're in to start as non-favorites for the Scudetto, right? Napoli should be the favourites for the Scudetto now. And he says, I don't talk about favourites or non-favourites. I only know one way: work hard, give your all, understand the culture, the difficulties of a season, and then you reap what you sow. I don't think it's right to talk about favourites. It's obvious that in Serie A teams, as teams aspire to win, they're always more or less the same teams. But in what I was saying before is that the facts count and get to the point. You have to push hard. But yeah, not making it outright claims, but I like that he didn't hide away from the fact that, yes, he's an unexperienced coach, but it doesn't matter who the coach was at Inter, especially with the amount we're investing and continuing to invest. Winning, we need to try to win. So that was Chivu's words. Those were Chivu's words. So let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on Chivu's words. We'll finish up now with Pepe Marotta's words. So we already talked about his kind of intro. Of course, he did some glazing towards the ownership, how Oak Tree are a constant presence. They're giving us a big hand, but in a silent ways. You haven't seen interviews, which is true. I've never heard Catherine Ralph or Alejandro Caño speak. But Oak Tree is a constant and far-sighted presence, so, future-looking presence. These fondi, I think the translation there should be, so, these investment funds are often classified in a negative light. And I think, quite rightly, mostly they are. But I said, in reality, even the planning phase is very ambitious as a great club. And then he says, Oak Tree want to invest in a Piano Gentile. New investments are being made. Work is underway. This is our beating heart. And also Interello, which is the youth team facilities, and I'm guessing might be the facility for the under 23. Don't quote me on that, but there are also works on there. The owners are very keen on development and enhancement of our company. The new stadium, of course, we know is at the heart of Inter and Oak Tree, so that's all good to hear. And then going back to sporting topics, he says, we've Champions League final, came second by a hair's breadth. So, very, very close. We must try to close that gap. So Marotta, again, reiterating, we want to win, back to winning ways. And this is one thing, I've always maintained. Yes, Marotta's maybe starting to show some signs of aging, maybe not being at the top of his game. But I've always maintained that until Marotta remains at this club, I will continue to be quite confident with how the club moves forward, because that's his history. This guy always wants to win. Whether we do, of course, is not in his control. Today we're starting again with the same ambitions. Inter has a history and a record to defend. There's no point hiding in spite. Yeah, I love this. We have to finish in the top 4, blah, blah, blah. No, we want to win, and that is everyone's goal. The new cycle begins with a new coach like Chivu. And then on Chivu, he says, it goes back to the rumors that he was a second choice or even a third choice. And here again, I think he's, obviously trying to gas up Chivu and trying to downplay anything else. But in reality, I don't think he's telling the truth. He says, when Oak Tree and I outlined the team's model we'd build, we tried to identify the right profile. And that's when we approached Chivu. So again, we know that they wanted Cesc Fabregas, they wanted the Zerbi, there was other names out there, and I'll be real. If you ask me, if it was Chivu in my top 5 candidates for Inter, probably not. Even in the top 10, maybe would have made a top 10, just stretching it out. But Chivu wasn't even in my thinking of potential Inter managers. So in that fact, the name did fit what the new model is. If Fabregas, the Zerbi were the names there, Chivu is in that kind of realm as well, of these kind of young up-and-coming coaches, modern coaches. So that is true. And they asked him, where has the model has changed, which is talking about this new Oak Tree model. So he's talking about, thinking with great foresight. They've made a significant sum available to the management. I think by the end of Mercato, when the Mercato will finish, we will have spent around 100 million euros. That is, the report saying that's what's been made available to the team. Already we spent about 65, if I remember correctly. So with Lookman, maybe Leone, it could easily go past the 100 million mark. So that's fair play and the truth that Oak Tree have made these funds available. And the transfer market is still open, still a month to go. And they're proud and happy with the Christian Chivu choice. Quick words, of course, on the under 23 team as well, which I said I will make a separate video on this. the under-23 team led by Stefano Vecchi, who used to be one of our youth team coaches. And this is a nice, thing I didn't think about. The first team and the second team, two coaches that were part of Inter setup. So this is almost like, very Ajax or Barcelona way of doing things, promoting coaches within the system. We haven't seen that before at Inter. And Marotta says they're proud that, Chivu used to be youth team coach and Vecchi, and now both of them are in charge of that side. So, but I'll skip past this bit. We'll talk about the under-23 team at some point. Talk about sustainability, and of course the fact that Inter soon will make actually a positive balance. So it means we'll actually make a profit on the books. He's not going to go into details of that, but again, this is the role of Oak Tree. And now the actual questions for him. Here it is, the one that you've been waiting for. Lukman Ademola. So, can you give us an update? He says he confirms the interest. Even the manager recognized, what we need to sign. The coach is important, but the players are equally as important. The second phase, I said, introduction with the new ownership, decided a new model, but we want to lower the age. But he knows that it's not just about, reducing the age and, balance sheet, the assets and things like that, which are important to do. He says, I make no secret of the fact Lukman is an important element, both on the recommendation of the staff and also the coach. And he's on the list of many sporting directors, not just Italian, but European. He's an Atalanta player. We have the utmost respect for Atalanta. We have an excellent relationship with the Percassi family, and I won't deny I've exchanged a few words with Percassi. That's part of the logic. You always have to raise the bar and the demands too. Don't be afraid to ask for good players, and that's what I can tell you. It's premature to know what will happen. He's one of those players. He's in the manager's, Ausilio Bachin and mine's thoughts. And and he says, in the next 2 to 3 days, we'll reach a conclusion on the discussion between Inter and Atalanta. If the conditions are right and Atalanta is determined to sell him, obviously, we'll try to initiate concrete negotiations to reach a conclusion. Otherwise, there will be so-called different choice, whether that's Openda, whoever. But yeah, I think that's what all the reports did say, that Inter want to finish up these negotiations as soon as possible, before the end of July, ideally. So we'll see how those go on. And then, he says, it's not just about young players. Lukman is 28, but you can't have, just young players. You need experience as well. And again, this is why I'm happy with Marotta. You saw what Milan did. They tried to only get young players, but you need a good mix of young and experienced and top-level players. And that's what Marotta said. And then, they asked him about Leoni. Is Leoni a target? He said, yeah, it would be useful for many teams, but right now we have other priorities. He's tried to really downplay the Leoni side of things. He said, Esposito comes from our Inter youth, one of the best around. The hope is to find Inter's Leoni here. I'm not saying that he's not good, but perhaps pressure from the media in recent months is a bit exaggerated. So yeah, maybe saying Parma, that 40 million asking price, pushing it a little bit. And of course, this new direction also requires protection. So, he talks about, of course, having a young coach, inexperienced coach. But he says, we're not talking about a kid. Parma made a courageous choice when they gave him their bench. He's a young coach, but this is precisely one of our motivations, the courage to act. And here I can't. Yeah, that's true. This is a very courageous decision by Inter, by Marotta and the whole team. We're a club that has courage and has had a lot of courage. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake, but you need courage to dare. We're focused on a young and talented coach, and the same goes for the players who are young and talented. We will support this team even through difficulties, because the management job is to support them. Between the club and the team, we are one group. Chivu won a treble. He understands Inter, the belonging, the work ethics. These are things to benefit. It's no small thing, and it helps us to win, and hopefully it will. And they made a very courageous choice in Chivu. He speaks the right way. He knows Inter inside out. I did like the press conference. I enjoy the way he speaks. As I said, there was few things that hopefully we can get more insight into Chivu. We'll have to wait and see for the friendlies in the upcoming days to start getting a little insights into how Chivu's Inter will work. And of course, if Marotta and co are able to pull through, Ademola Lookman, Leone, etc. But this Inter team will be dynamic, vertical, different, adaptable. This is what I wanted to hear. This is the little takeaways from me from this press conference. And this Inter team wants to keep winning, and it is being backed on the transfer market. So overall, happy with this press conference. I'm now ready and excited to get into this new season. And of course, you can follow along this new season on this channel as always. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the press conference down below. Ciao ragazzi, always, Forza Inter. Let's go. 25-26 season is underway.